4th, 2024. If you'd please...
Microphones, gentlemen.
Rise.
Microphones, please. Don't forget your microphone.
Please rise for the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance. Gracious Heavenly Father, thank you for this day, Lord. I ask you to watch after us tomorrow in this election, Lord, that it may be to your liking. In your name we pray, amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Next on the agenda is approval of the minutes of October 7th, 2024.
Approve.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Hurricane Milton restoration update.
So at the request of, really? Mark?
My name is Mark. Good to meet you.
All right. We thought we'd do a little bit of an update recap on the hurricane, kind of lessons learned and everything we did. So Brad's going to put together a PowerPoint and he's going to give us the presentation.
It's it's a lengthy deck. Some parts we can just skip over, talk over, other parts we can dive into a little bit more. And at the end of the day, if we didn't cover topics you want to see a little bit more work on, we can certainly go down that path. As far as the organization of the deck, we got the storm path and prediction. We talk about resources, the impact to our electric system, the restoration and recovery, communications, and lessons learned are the main topics that we have for us. And again, this is the path that it did take. Milton, as you all know, it stood out in the Gulf for quite some time before it started getting a track, and it hit just south of Sarasota through the state to even maintain as a Category 1. Part of the issues that you still have with any storm is, what it's really going to do and what we think it's going to do. And this slide I thought was pretty good, where it talked about Saturday prediction going right over Orlando, and then, Sunday and Monday and Tuesday, you have all these other days slated, and then you have in the dark line the actual path that it did take. Just a couple things. It did impact about 8:30 p.m. Right south of Sarasota is a Cat 3. Closer to Leesburg, I measured about 60 miles away. It was still a Cat 1, 90-mile-an-hour winds away from us. We saw gusts at 75 miles an hour. We were measuring at the airport, and around 11 p.m. the signal was lost for a day. So whatever gust you had, it took out the indicator that we were monitoring. And exited the state around 5 a.m. as a Cat 1, 85 miles an hour. Going back a slide, where what our prediction was for Thursday was we were going to get impacted most of the day with the high winds. Matter of fact, we worked Wednesday, and around Wednesday at 8 p.m. or so, the winds got to where we couldn't work outside anymore. We sent most of our folks home. We had one crew that we held over. Operations obviously held over. Chris held over. And our plan was, as soon as conditions got better on Thursday, we'd call people in. And so let me talk a little about resources, and we'll go into what the next few days had. So, we did start extended shifts and schedules on Wednesday, and pretty much kept it through the following Wednesday on the 16th. We called crews and resources in to begin assessment 6 a.m. the morning of the 10th. Again, earlier we were thinking the 10th was going to be pretty much sit and wait. Maybe in the afternoon we'd get freed up, but the storm had other plans and got out quicker. Mutual aid support, we did get 3 different groups in to help us. Troy, Alabama, a group of 8, Keys Energy, a group of 6 line techs and 2 tree trimmers, and Scottsboro, Alabama, 6 line technicians. The reason we were able to get the Alabama folks in is they were at Fort Pierce, and we'll talk about that in a minute. They were at Fort Pierce, and they did not get hit as hard as they thought, so very quickly they released them to go help others. And essentially, we doubled our workforce, with line department. We have a little over 20 linemen in our area, or line technicians in our area, and bringing in about the same number of resources. So again, mutual aid, Troy did arrive on Friday, the 11th, so we pulled the trigger on them to come in on the Thursday morning early. We had them kind of keyed up, waiting for final word. So we went ahead and said on Friday or Thursday morning early, we need them in. So they came in and were ready to work on Friday. Matter of fact, they got here late Thursday and were able to turn wrenches on Friday. Keys Energy in Scottsboro were released from Fort Pierce, and they arrived Saturday morning and started working on Saturday. Catering, we were able to get catering set up to feed all of our kind of extended workforce, if you will. We're on 16-hour shifts. Public Works is on long shifts, long days. Mutual aid, with mutual aid comes meals, comes hotels, comes all of those things around mutual aid. And again, those are successes, and we'll talk about that more later. But certainly the mutual aid and the support of the mutual aid was a success for our restoration. A couple just quick pictures, Troy, Scottsboro, and Keys. We sent them a variety of places. I think the people in Sunnyside got to meet Troy day after day after day. That group kind of stayed in that area. Scottsboro spent a lot of time up in Spring Lake Drive, and then we had the Keys everywhere. This picture of the Keys is in front of Fruitland Park, where there's City Hall, that Fountain Boulevard. I think they had a lot of trouble. So again, initial impact, 5 a.m., the dust settles, the storm goes away. We had 18,892 customers out of service, 68%. 12 feeders were locked out and open, 8 field reclosers. Field reclosers are sectionalizing devices, that in certain instances can have as many customers as a feeder on it. So we take a feeder, we'll break it into 2 or 3 or even 4 or 5 sections. We had 1 substation out of service due to a Duke transmission line. And again, upon initial impact, we had some things that were high on our list. So the U of F IT server facility, as well as their North Assisted Living facility off of Oak Terrace, was out of power. Their generator failed to start. And so they were very excited at 11 p.m. is when they lost power, that their generator failed to start. Matter of fact, Chris was there that evening, and we got a crew by there to have a look. We just couldn't boom up. We couldn't get involved in the restoration. We had to wait till the storm passed us. The City of Leesburg sewer plant, also we had a generator failure there. The airport had some outages. A big portion of that was out. We had 2 shelters identified on South Street that were out, and a large assisted living facility. The new one there is in South US 27. These are some of the key things that we had out first thing in the morning. Just a point of reference, because I'll talk a little bit about feeders and laterals and services, just as a reminder, large transmission lines on the left-hand side of that diagram belong to Duke Energy. They drop down their feeds to our substations. We have 5 substations. We talk about main feeders. Main feeders run up and down the large streets. They run up in 27. They run up on 468. All the main corridors will have feeders. Lateral fuses tend to go off to neighborhoods, so you have large lateral fuses feeding into neighborhoods. And again, they can be overhead or underground. And then finally, you have transformers and service cables, those sort of things. And that's our system priority list as well, right? You got to get the transmission up, you got to get your substations up, the main feeders, the laterals, the transformers, services. That's our plan from a system perspective. I think we've talked about that before. Again, the impact by the numbers, we had 38 poles that were damaged and needed to be replaced. We had 20 pole mount transformers that also got replaced, 200 spans, or over 9,400 feet of primary cable that were on the ground. Some areas are badly hit due to it's all about tree damage. In fairness, the winds Normally, the high winds are not tearing down our facilities. Our poles are designed for those higher speeds of wind. It's trees coming down, trees falling, and it's not trimming per se, because you don't trim for a 60-foot oak tree to fall down across your line. You trim clearance is 10 foot, right? That's what we shoot for. Certainly the trimming accounted for some of the outages with limbs blowing in there, but you gals drove around. There are a lot of trees that were down. Sunnyside area, Beverly Shores, Beverly Harbor, Lake Forest, that's the whole area across the street from Griffin. The Spring Lake Drive area in Fruitland Park, Stop Subdivision, the Montclair, Main Street, Lone Oak area, and Treasure Island off of County Road 44. A little map, we're still working on the concept. I'd like this to be a little more precise, but I was able to draw some polygons around our service area. So again, 68% of our customers are out of power. Some of the areas that we're showing, we don't have any customers in that area. The swamp area down in the southern area, there's not very many customers. But in a quick shot, you know, anything around the lake had some heavy damage. Normally, the winds come across those big lakes unobstructed, and then the first thing they hit, they try to do some damage. Here's some of the damaged areas. Again, some of the poles down, our crews working, poles broken, heavy trees coming down, just some of the damaged areas. So again, Wednesday was all pre-storm activity. Like I said, we worked about 8 p.m., I apologize, and sent crews home. We kept a couple people on. Thursday comes in 6 a.m., 5 a.m. and earlier. The operations is grabbing their list of outages and prioritizing what do we have out. Noting what do we have out and prioritizing that from order of importance, you know, our critical customers, the ones I just shared with you. So when the crews, we did make a call at 6 for have everybody came in. Crews kind of arrived around 7. At 8 a.m. we are already beginning to do our assessment work. Again, Thursday, we asked Troy, Alabama to come on, so they departed for the city of Leesburg on Thursday. Our focus on Thursday is, you know, main feeder assessment and feeder restoration. That was our driving factor or driving focus for the first day. You have 18,800 customers out. Focus on main feeders. That does a lot of things. It helps pick up traffic lights, pick up lift stations, pick up those commercial and residential customers that are attached to the main feeder. So that's all pluses. And we were able to focus on the IT server facility and their assisted living facility. We got that picked up about 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning. Shelters on South Street, we had a large tree come down and take out that feeder. We were able to get that tree out of the way, isolate it, and restore service to there by about 1:30 in the afternoon. And in total, the first day we restored service to about 12,318 customers the first day, right?
2/3.
Crews at work, you know, again, I imagine this presentation in some fashion I'll show to my team. I haven't yet. You guys are the first ones. And these are just some of the pictures that we were dealing with the damage that we had. And then some of our folks that we brought in. One of the things I do want to mention, when you bring in the mutual aid, you do have to split up your own workforce a bit because you have to provide that team some logistic support, some, you know, switching and tagging support, some of that stuff. So Daryl on the top corner, he got the guys from Keys Energy. Big Hoss is what they call Daryl. Big Hoss, the guys from Keys Energy. And Robert on the far side over here, he got the group from Scottsboro. And Ronnie, our inspector, got the group from Troy. So again, it takes some of our foremen, some of our key people, you can divide them up and we can do a lot more by breaking down a crew or two, bringing in 20 people and providing them some of the supervision. So Friday, you know, I try to go through these a little quicker. Friday, we did look for additional support. Actually, we looked for additional laborers on Thursday, but Friday is when we got wind that Fort Pierce was releasing them. So we jumped on them pretty quick, and then you'll see in Saturday they arrived from Fort Pierce to start helping us out. Friday, remaining feeder restoration was our focus, and then we started addressing those large areas that were impacted. If you recall, we talked about Stock Subdivision and Sunnyside and Treasure Island. We're out there for quite some time. And then anyway, we started focusing on the larger subdivisions, larger laterals. We got the large assisted living on Marlene and Street, and also the airport campus about 2:50 in the afternoon. Friday, we had got that back up. So again, another 3,400 customers. You can see the big effort in the front is I got large feeders that are out. I'm able to isolate and restore load to a lot of my customers. We start on the next day, and you'll see in subsequent days, it's just, you get into, like on Saturday, you're starting into the rebuild and the replacement and repair. Because the first day is Thursday. I'm not rebuilding and replacing. I'm not setting new poles on the first day. I identify those issues and those problems. I mark them, but I move on to try to get the bigger number of customers restored. So 3,400 we got on Friday. Saturday, still focusing on laterals, and you're getting more into the rebuild, replacement, repair, those sort of things. The numbers cut in half again. Now I'm at 95% completed by Saturday. So, Al, this is the 72-hour window. Where are we at in 72 hours? We're at 95% complete. When you start reporting to the state, the state says when you're at 95, you can stop reporting. But we still had a lot of work to do. Again, if you're in that 5% that are still out, the last thing you want to hear is, I'm sending my mutual aid home. Well, we didn't send them home. We didn't send them home until Wednesday morning. So they worked all Monday and they worked Tuesday. So Sunday, ensuring the schools are ready for Monday morning, and ensuring, Ken still working on damaged laterals. Heavily focused on residential restoration, large areas first, smaller areas last. Somebody's always going to be last. You're always going to have somebody saying, hey, I wasn't brought back until Tuesday. Some of that's by definition. Again, if you're in a smaller outage with 10 or 15 customers out, you got a transformer that's laying on the ground, that's going to be one of the last things you end up working on. So by design, again, Sunday, 98.8% restored. Monday, now we're doing pole replacements. We're putting primary back up. We even start doing reinstate. So reinstate is where a customer service has been ripped down. It's on the ground. That's preventing them from getting service when our crews go by. So now they hire an electrician. We go ahead and get notice that they're ready to get back and reinstalled, and we start working the reinstates on Monday. Again, working through, at this point, it's a lot of places to go. It's just a lot of time-consuming effort. Tuesday, you can see where we're now at the feeder level assignments, and that's what we've been kind of waiting for. It's not a sweep. We're not going from one end to the other, but we're taking all of our known outages and incidents, and we're dispatching them at a feeder level. So our crew would say, here's all known outages, here's all known hazards. A hazard is something we come across on day one where a tree's taking a service down and we note it on the map as a hazard. We'll get into the map a little bit. I don't know how many times you pulled up the map during the storm to see what our outage numbers was, but our customers went to it in droves to see what that information was. So Tuesday, finally, you can see the map. Finally, I got 27,700 customers, and I got no outages. And I think that's what our Tuesday mark was. Still on Wednesday and Thursday and Friday, we still had a lot of work to do. We were getting some new outages. We had a lot of, probably about 52 hazards identified that we're working through, and then the reinstates are coming through. So overall, you talk about restoration. My 2 cents is, we had a successful restoration. We doubled our workforce. We worked long shifts and long schedules. We had push crews from Public Works helping us out. We had catering. Catering started breakfast on Friday through Tuesday. And we just told them on Thursday morning that we needed catering for 100 folks. So that was, again, a good success. Communicating our plan, we'll talk about that in a few minutes. I think that was successful. The IVR was up. We had text. You could text an outage, and those systems were both up and running. You can see we had lots of activity on those systems. 16,000 IVR calls, 10,000. Now, these people may have called more than once, right? And in all fairness, if you've been out multiple days, you know, you're adding probably 30, whatever the number is. You're adding some of those numbers to that. And again, Saturday night, 72 hours after impacts, 95% of our customers picked up. Sunday night, you know, we're at 98%. So got a few charts, a few graphs I wanted to say. This is I got from Mike Andrews. He's part of our IT group, and he hasn't fully vetted this out, but I asked Mike to show me what kind of volume we had on the web. You know, how many people are hitting the web, how many people are looking at the information we post on the web, the outage calls that we post on the web. So you can see during the storm how much activity that is. And you'll see that shape of this chart in a few minutes. It follows another one of our chart shapes. So you can see a lot of hits, a lot of people going to our website for information. And we'll talk about communication in a minute. This other slide says, well, this is our restoration effort. You know, at the height of the storm, 18,800 customers out of power. Day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, and 5, you can see where the majority, you know, the effort on day 1, you know, is that 12,000 customers out of 18,000 that we picked up on day 1. 2 and 3, 4 and 5, you know, it gets to be noise at the end of that. How do we compare against our IOUs and the co-ops? And this is Lake County only Lake County. So in Lake County, how did we compare against our neighbors? You can see, you know, we had a pretty steady downward trend of outages. It's not surprising that the IOU number gone up. You know, again, they may have had a transmission event that happened. You know, the storm passes, but a tree falls later and takes out a big group of customers. So the uptick is not unusual, but something did occur certainly after the storm passed. I would imagine it's on some kind of transmission level. But you can see, you know, between, you know, we're about a day ahead. When you're looking at day 3, where we are at day 3 versus where they're at for day 3, you know, we beat them by, I think, a good day, if you will. You know, they didn't get to where we were until day 4. We got there at day 3. Communicate through Lori Beach and Pam as well. So again, I think, you know, as best you can, you know, we tried to leverage what we could get out there, information that we had control over. So that kind of takes me at the end, you know, last few slides is lessons learned. And I think whenever you have a major event, I think it's important that we go back and critique what we did. How did we do? What did we like that we performed, you know, during the storm? What should we maybe tweak a little bit? You know, I just jotted down some of the areas that, you know, at some point I think we need to dive into a little bit further. Should we have staff the city EOC or the county EOC? You know, what was the pros and cons of that? Certainly there's a benefit in that we didn't have captured personnel during those events that normally would have been in another role. So we didn't do a lot of that this year. But there was some feedback mechanism, I think, on some of the things that we shared that wasn't always there. Things were happening. For instance, we had a tree come down on Pixiola Road that blocked our ability to get down there in that subdivision. You know, I gave it to Chris. Chris gave it to Mira. Mira sends it in. We get feedback that they got it and they're on it, or they have it on their list. But there wasn't a lot of feedback that when it was going to be taken care of. But sure enough, when we had crews that were going down that road for restoration, the tree was clear, right? And so we had a lot of that success, but we didn't necessarily have some of the feedback that goes along with that. You know, should we have staffed the call center on the weekend? Saturday is Sunday. So my memory says, you know, Wednesday, Thursday was we kind of shut down for the city for the storm. Facing. Going back to social media, the next question that I put down there is, should we have somebody respond to some of the social media questions? We put a lot of information out, and I think for the most part, I think the information was well received. I think people liked having some data they could look at. I think there were some questions that came back from time to time. I'm not in the electric, they never use those words, but I'm in legacy. How long will we be out? Or I'm in the such and such area. And my group knows, well, that's not the electric territory. That's Duke or Seacoast, because we stop at, 33. We don't go any further south than that. So, do you have somebody on social media? I mean, obviously there's pros and cons there as well, but do you have somebody monitor and respond to some of that? And
I personally did that when I was, and look, people love the information, and 99.5% of people are just happy to get information they love the information. Like, here's what's going on from a big picture. Here's what we're doing as a city, like you did. The people that actually want to comment back, I found to be, the 0.5% that are completely unreasonable and all they care about is why aren't you at my house today fixing my power? You guys are incompetent.
there's some of that.
Yeah.
I'm not discounting that.
I would put more effort into just putting general information out.
Yeah.
And I was asked, so because I'm on Duke, and I just got general text messages that they clearly sent out to everyone. Mm-hmm. Do we have the ability to send out mass texts to our customers that have text messaging?
Sure. I mean, again, there is
Maybe
the
we do, I don't know.
Text My Gov solution that we have here at the city. In fairness, the electric department did not use Text My Gov in it, and because a couple of reasons. One is we're putting out plain information across all these other social media types, but we didn't send out a text message out that was in general, right?
Yeah, I mean, I really like it. Now I don't use social media at all. So, if I hadn't gotten that from them, I wouldn't have gotten anything. Mm-hmm. And it's just general, hey, the storm's coming through. Our crews can't do anything, so, until it's safe. And then it's now crews are out assessing. We hope to have an idea of the general assessment by the end of the day. And then we've assessed it, and we hope, based on your area.
But we did all that messaging. We just did it on the web. We put it on the IVR.
Okay.
We
So
put it on all
similar,
we posted all that information you just listed. But it went on the web, it went on social media, it went on Lakefront TV, on the IVR. So that's kind of how we communicated. There is a Text My Gov, and as the lessons learned, we could talk about how that solution could find a place in our communication scheme. We did get, as you saw the one slide, an awfully lot of text messages. Back before, I think we had 10,000 customers reported that they were out of power via the texting methodology. Another 16,000 called in the IVR. Let me see. I think so. I can take a note on lessons learned to say, do we want to consider, or how can texting be incorporated into some of the messaging that we put out? And then internally, we wanted to have a little better handle on doing some reporting on schools and lift stations and medical facilities, just some internal batch files that I think we could run off the metering system that we could ping and get some confirmation about who's out from a major customer perspective without having to roll a truck.
And sorry, and back to the text messages, not just storm. So I also get them anytime there's an outage in impacting my house if someone else reports it.
So we
do that.
I do that in the electric department. So we have a feeder lockout on a blue sky day.
Yeah.
We can send a message out. I think the instruction says any customer, any outage over 100 in total, get a text message, and we'll send out a text message. It's not Text My Gov, but it's using text power.
Right.
But we send out a text message on a blue sky operation, any outage over 100, and we give them a status update. We give them a estimated time of restoration. That's all part of that texting service that we do in the electric for any customer, any outage over 100.
Why over 100?
It's just it's a manual process.
Okay.
You know, again,
Yeah.
remember
Yeah.
the good, better, best. We're
Yeah.
not at a point where it's totally integrated. And I think to do that, you know, I think last meeting, one of the commission meetings, we talked about, you know, $100,000 upgrade to bring everything up to allow us some more means of communication. So right now it's manual, and so the operators say, hey, I got an outage over 100, we call it. Now, if somebody calls into the IVR, they get the information, but we need them to call in. They'll say, we're aware of the outage, this is the time of restoration that's estimated, that kind of thing. When you call in, you automatically get that message. So the outbound message goes to anybody in 100 or larger in an outage.
The medical facilities, their generator didn't come on. If it did come on, does that move them down in the line that you don't have to go by there, or do you have to be there in a certain amount of time?
Well, so the server room for the U of F, I remember because Chris was working, but they got my number. I'm talking to the CEO at 1 in the morning for U of F Hospital. And, you know, they knew the answer, but they wanted to hear it asked and said, you know, is there any way you guys can get out? I said, no, not until the wind subsides. So they had no place else to turn. However, to answer your question, it's still a priority one for me. Even if they got a generator running, it's still going to be high on my list when the storm settles and I gotta restore power for them. You know, to me, it's like our IT or our backup generation. It'll get us over a bump. It'll keep us going uninterrupted. But at some point, you know, we need to move toward commercial power. So
But you look at the ALF that's south of town. I mean, that new facility and their generator doesn't work. I mean, why would that be a crisis for y'all, for the city?
well, again, I have my list of feeders, right? And 165 is feeder out of East Substation. Number 165 serves a U of F medical facility over there off Dixie, right? My top priority feeder. So if that feeder goes out, then the first daylight, I'm going to go ahead and dress that feeder. That's my hospital feed. Regardless of what the generator is or isn't doing,
Okay.
my method says that's my number one call. And I go through my list of number ones, and I'm going to ensure that they're in power. And generator is nice. It got them running, but, you know, it's still high on my list. So, no, they don't drop down they don't drop down the list. They stay where they are.
We have some of our customers who have direct phone numbers to get to us. The hospital is one of those. So they can get to us no matter what. So we do have that relationship with them as well.
And for clarification, those are their generators and it was their failures.
On those two.
Okay.
Right.
So we get your number before the next storm, right?
You know, actually, I didn't put it on there, another success, but you know, politics, whatever you want to call it, I got very little input from the commission. You know, Al had a handful of items, but he's getting those through his mechanisms. You know, so, you know, we were left to run our plan pretty much. And I appreciate that effort. I mean, I appreciate you know, keeping that piece out of it because it's tough. I mean, there's certainly part of a day that at the end of the day when things settle down, you know, did we provide the proper focus on the city of Leesburg, Fruitland Park, you know, the county, Lake County? You have all these other areas, and within the city you have all these districts. You know, at some point in time when we don't have a success, you know, there's a lot of drilling down that can happen to say, well, what was your focus on this day, You know, why was District 3 left off and they were the last ones back up? They're always the last ones back up. You know, but, you know, we haven't had any of that discussion as of yet. You know, I don't expect there to be a lot of that push back this storm. I think, you know, when you had the numbers that we were presenting, that I think a lot of some of the noise can kind of goes away.
So a good friend of mine was one of the last that you put on. He is basically where he's on the lake, 473, right across Elizabeth Street, down that way going towards the lake. But he was on a feeder, I think, that went through McLeod's property that through the lake. But does when his meter isn't on, does it tell you it's not on? Because he was saying he was calling and they couldn't tell him whether he was on or off. So I don't know who he talked to.
473?
Well, across from 473, make a right. I guarantee he's one of the last ones that are there. Go down Elizabeth Street all the way to the end. They're on like an island, but
It's way east. Way east.
Be the east.
what do they call it down
I
there?
thought we stopped around Radio Road. Did we go?
We go a little bit beyond Radio
Yeah,
Road.
you do. But it's on the south side.
It's on the
of
lake side.
441.
Those are all those red cabins down there on the water.
Yes, yeah, back in there.
Yeah, and again, I'm assuming, right? Because I've been out there on other jobs before, but that's probably a tree came down over a line that impacted, half dozen customers. That's going to be one of the last things that we get to. That's a day 6 kind of event.
That's what I told him. I said, it's because you're rich. They didn't want to take care of you.
And that was something that, came up with some of the FMPA. Like, there's basically an agreed upon way you turn on power for everyone. The IOUs, for municipalities, with hospital, medical, and then just density. And that's just it, right? Like, everyone does this the same way pretty much.
We got, a feeder list. We got a priority 1 through number 8, right? Our medical facilities are number 1. I think number 2, we get down to our EOC for the city. For us, our EOC is, our station's number 2 priority. You got water, wastewater. They're high on the list. Communications, shelters are, kind of midway on there. And then, the bottom of the list is residential, and they kind of stack up largest to smallest. You saw what we were putting on paper. Everything on there was kind of grouped in that same order, largest to smallest.
Well, nobody's asked the key question. Do you have to pay up front for these people coming down and wait for FEMA to pay you?
Yes.
So what kind of investment did you estimate?
The to be determined.
So our guarantee is that our agreements say we'll pay these mutual aid resources at the agreed upon price, and they're either time and a half. Some of the guys were cheaper than our own guys, but you had some time and a half guys, and you had some double time guys, and so we pay up front on all of that, and then we get reimbursed through our FEMA partner.
Yeah. So that's just the mutual aid part of it. Just for like total cost of the storm, Irma, is that the last one?
Last big one.
Yeah, our number there was like 1.8 million total cost out. So reimbursement for FEMA groups, salary, materials. My guess is we'll be 2 or 3 times that. I think just our WAG, $3-4 million bucks.
But we get a bunch of tree work paid for by FEMA.
Yeah. And your reimbursement is what, a year, 18 months later?
Every storm, it seems to get a little bit longer. So yeah, about a year is probably about it. So now, Brad's group is going to be doing all the paperwork.
Yeah.
So it's out, but it will get replenished.
We're already working on that documentation. One bill.
Well, if I may, first of all, thank you for doing this because I did request it. A great presentation. I commend you and everybody on what appeared to be at the time a pretty solid job of restoration. I obviously have a different perspective sitting in this seat than I do sitting on my couch. But I was one of those geeks who was very engaged on social media, trying to get a gauge as to what were people saying. And I shared with Al that I would say anecdotally 85 to 90% of the people were very supportive, very understanding, very appreciative. You're right, that last 5%, they don't care about anybody or anything at that point. It's now 4 days, 5 days, they just want their power on, and they start to get cranky and aggravated. But you guys did a great job. I think, You know, the other thing I like is the lessons learned, because it shows that you were always looking for ways to continue to improve. And I don't think we ever hit, you know, complete perfection in a situation like this. We learn from the things that we can continue to do better. One of my questions you addressed was, when you called for the extra support, my question is, once they got here, do you feel like you had enough extra support, or should there have been more, more guys on the ground doing their thing? Would that have sped things up any?
Well, if I flipped all the way back to like the third slide, you know, you're out there 3 days out, and you don't really know for sure where it's going to go or how I'm going to get impacted. If you're not making a decision on 4 days out, 5 days out on mutual aid, then it's too late, right? And so you're pulling the trigger when it's hundreds of miles away, and the swath is this big, and how is it going to impact me? You know, how big is it going to be? You know, this storm skirted right by Orlando, but they had maybe a third of their customers out of power because all the energy was in that northwest quadrant that sat on top of us. Right. So, you know, those things are hard to guess, and part of the
three or four days out, it actually looked like we were going to get hit more dramatically. It continued to shift south. So the argument could be made, should we have been teeing up for more support based on what we knew 3 or 4 days out? Yeah. And then the follow-up question is, if you find yourself in a situation where you don't need that extra help, is it not easy enough to then release them to go where the help is needed?
You would think.
Yeah, so on that note too, you gotta, and I'll jump in just for a second, because I think 2 or 3 important things on teeing it up early out, and municipal electric utilities in Florida. Those are the ingredients you got to put, and the previous storm. So Helene was an impact because big crews were still responding, and they were up in the Carolinas and, you know, Appalachian states. So that put a strain on getting mutual aid. Then out in Florida too, with municipal electric utilities, look at kind of the big utilities that are the big mutual aid providers. Lakeland Electric, GRU, KUA, all those folks are in the same cone as we are.
Right.
So, hey, Lakeland Electric, come and help us. Well, you know, Leesburg, we're hunkering down ourselves. Yeah. So those resources that can provide resources, they're tied up as well.
Well, they all sucked up resources.
Yeah, and in fact, you know, I think probably one of the interesting kind of facts from this storm was, you know, the guys are saying that this is probably the first time Leesburg ever needed mutual aid. This is the first time. We've always been we've been in a safe location, and typically our folks go out and help other people. So Lakeland Electric was one of it pretty much modeled our curve on their scale. We might have even been a little bit faster than Lakeland Electric. So those big utilities, they were tied up. So now we're in out of state. I mean, look at Key West. I mean, typically we're down in Key West helping them. So the cone, where the cone was hitting affected resources, the storm affected resources, and then, you know, did we have enough? Probably the answer is yeah. Once we get hit, we never have enough.
It's what we don't know. I mean, again, at the time, you got a crew of 8 that was already, set aside. You know, we only got 23 linemen, so crew of 8, it's a big crew for us. It's like 2 crews. We already had that reserved, and as soon as the storm passed and we knew what our impact was, then we raised our hand and said we need some more. Now, again, that was Thursday morning. We got confirmation Friday that we had the 2 crews, and they showed up on Saturday. So, you know, we missed a day of turning wrenches on those bigger crews, but at some point it's a bit of a gamble. And the one storm we had where we got 2 crews out of Michigan, we paid mobilization costs. So it's not huge when you're looking at the amount of money, but it was 20, 40 grand probably for crews that we had to mobilize that we ended up releasing. But even though we released them and they were picked up by somebody else, I'm still on the hook for the mobilization costs through that day. So it was, you know, and that's $30,000 that, you know, at some point you can roll the dice.
And that's a gamble too, because you can spend 20, 30, 40, 100 grand and then if the storm misses you, you're out that money. That's not getting reimbursed. So if it's not a declared storm, that money's out. So that's something, you know, the cost is something we look at.
Again, it was a one-day, the one crew got here Friday, the other crew got here Saturday. And again, they can't come and, we don't like to bring them all the way in because we want to stage them out of the area of impact. So you're going to stage them in the border and then they come down. I don't think we could have got a full day's work out of them anyway. But
Yeah, one of the things you were up against, I don't know the authenticity or the source, but a big picture circulating during the storm where, this aerial shot of hundreds and hundreds of staged lineman trucks just ready to roll.
Yeah.
They were all parked at the villages and they were ready to roll. And people were like, well, where'd they all roll to? Because they're not in Leesburg.
Yeah.
So just to be aware of, again, I don't know whether that was a legitimate photo or
well,
not.
it is
but that's,
legit. I mean, Duke and
IOU.
got a huge number of resources, and they'll line them up there.
Gotcha.
They went to Pinellas.
The only other comments I was going to make real quickly was I also thought the updates were good. I wondered if there was a way to maybe do them with a specific timed frequency. So, for instance, when you're tracking a hurricane, there's the 4 p.m. update, the 8 p.m. update, the midnight update. Is there a way to kind of do something along those lines when you guys are doing those updates in that type of situation? Because we're getting them, and then we went a really long period of time with no updates.
But we did try to do kind of a beginning of the day and the end of the day, and then we tried to do a midday. And at midday started off around 2, and sometimes it got pushed a little bit. But our goal was to do 3 a day. But that midday report is always a little tough to get in because oftentimes we don't get good numbers until the end of the day. So I like the beginning and at the end, but the folks, trying to do a midday helps, but I think that target moved a lot. Some days it came out at noon, and other days it probably didn't come out till 4.
Understood. But again, I think from the standpoint of communication, number one, you can never possibly over-communicate information in a case like that. I love Dan pushing on the idea of the text messaging because there is a large portion of people who aren't messing around with social media these days. So that is just one more opportunity to communicate.
Right.
To even say, our next anticipated update will be in 4 hours or whatever the time might be.
So I don't think it's a big lift to say, we got the messaging component nailed down. I just need to find somebody that can manage the communication process. So when we're impacted, and again, I think the best example I can give you is, for catering, Robert Hicks and I talked about on the day of the storm, on Thursday, we activated catering, and that was the last discussion I had with Robert because he had it all set up. But for some of the other stuff, we need to figure out a better plan. And, just like the hotel, I like Robert or his team to kind of manage that. I need so many rooms, but the number kept changing daily, right? But somebody needs to manage that process. The other thing that we'd like to see is, we think we got to embed some people with our crews that can help us gather data better. The data needed for FEMA restoration. We need to do a little better job doing that. And we've tried to use our own resources, but it's teaching them a new trick. What's the adage? I'll just leave it at that. It's difficult sometimes. So I think we can identify some resources internally that we could slide over and train to say, hey, I need you all to help me with FEMA data collection. So some of those things we need to leverage some of the other resources that maybe don't have a storm job per se and kind of sign them up for some of this stuff.
Going back to your update, if you don't mind me asking, where would you want to see those updates? Any other place than we're posting already?
It sounded like you had it pretty well covered under the circumstances. I did spend quite a bit of time on the website, and I might have missed the updates, but in large part, I kept going to the map, which was my follow-up question, because I had a really hard time getting the map to show anything that was of any use whatsoever. But I think between social media, I think adding text messaging to your arsenal of communication would be valuable. I had asked Al, I wasn't sure whether Lakefront TV allows you to do a crawl across the bottom of the screen that you could continue to update that with information, realizing that at some point 68% of your people were without power and probably couldn't watch. I know there's other platforms, but that might have been another platform to be able to communicate that information.
Again, I think the text messaging, we can kind of talk about incorporating that into the other communication methodology. I think it's fairly straightforward.
And I just want to reiterate, I'm not being critical at all. I think you guys did a really good job.
We have to poke a little bit at it and say, hey, maybe they could do a little better here or there.
Can you explain the map to me? Was I not understanding it? Was it not working properly? I mean, at times it looked like there was like one house in a circle that looked like it had no power.
You had to drill down, right?
You could only pinch and squeeze and drill so much before you couldn't get.
The summary of the map is it works well for small normal outages.
Okay.
On these bulk outages, when there's 70% of our customers out, it's just red. And I think you saw too, though, as customers came back on, then the map started isolating some stuff.
Right.
And the little electric bolt isn't exactly correct. It might be 123 Main Street, but instead of 123 Main Street, it might be at the intersection of 27 in Main. So I think the map works, and I don't think we leave the map because I think for our SOP, it's functional. And in these storms, look, so they come once every 5 years. So how much resource do we want to spend being technically efficient when it's a 1 in 5 year event?
But that's just.
But those numbers weren't coming out.
Yeah, I'm going from since I've been here, right? Like there's been 2 since I've been here.
Yeah.
Irma and this one, if I remember right.
Well, you're trying to protect the 1% that are going to complain.
Right. So
the map, if I interject, it's the good, better, best. We have a good outage map that provides information to our customers, and it keeps them active, engaged, if you will. The lightning bolts are hazards that tends to clutter up the map a little bit. Maybe we got to figure out a better way and maybe just turn that off so they're not displayed, because that added some confusion. There are different mapping systems out there, but it's also a magnitude more of dollars that we have to spend to get a polygon that gives you a better representation of the area impact.
But what's interesting is what you just showed me, 500 and something, I assume that's homes, 500 and something homes right now are without power. That was not displaying during the storm. That's my own observation.
Even if you zoom
Numbers
around,
like that were not showing.
yeah, it was. It was all the time, Mark.
I should have screenshotted it for you.
Because when you went to the map on Wednesday night, it said 18,602 customers out, and those numbers, that total number clicked down the whole time. I was watching that. Because I think I'm 3,000.
The shapes don't work.
70,000 hits. I'm 3,000 of them. But no, and that was the number I looked at. Customers out.
The tally number. The tally number is what you're saying.
So I think, Mark, when you looked at it, there are some bigger numbers on the map during the outage event, but there are a ton of smaller numbers as well. If you zoom in on your phone or on the computer, you can see a little bit more, but there's no graphical representation. It doesn't really show me where the outage is, because all those 500 customers are on top of the protected device, and the area may be substantially different than where the circle is located.
They should probably know where the outage is if they're looking
Right
to
there.
see if their house is affected.
So there's 729 customers out right
My
now.
circle was
That was the
near my
number.
home.
Yep.
No, I mean,
That's
if
the
you
number you
don't
wanna
have
look
power at
at.
your house, you
The accuracy
Do you need the map
of
to
this
show you that?
204.
No.
I know that
You know.
but I do like Mark's point on the
523
regular communications though.
So these
And I
I
would
don't
just
no,
push,
those
like,
aren't
on the
exact.
midday, if you don't have good data, like
But
it doesn't
that
have to
other
be
number
a
is.
data update. It can be, crews are working on
Oh, no,
X,
they're
Y, Z
customers.
big stuff. We'll have another update
They're customers.
tonight. Like it doesn't have to be.
You mean on the storm?
Yeah, during the storm, you mentioned like during the middle of the day, it's hard. It could be just a generic update of the crew, crews are working on these 3 big things.
Yeah.
We'll have more data for you this afternoon. There's like a regular check-in, I think is, I like that.
We can certainly communicate more, again, on the web. there's really no boundaries because you have a lot of narrative you can add and pictures and information you can add. You know, the outage information, we try to be particular. We try to make sure it's the same information across all boundaries. So the 8 a.m. update is the same on everywhere I go to look.
Right.
I don't want to have a disconnect and say, well, I got a different story on the website than I got on social media. We want, and I think we worked hard to make sure that didn't occur, right?
Let's see, the last thing you have is thank you and a resolution for
Well, yeah, I sent out the letters on the left-hand side already, but Al has teed up some resolutions to come through for the three utilities that assisted us. Again, we couldn't have done it without them.
Good.
And I think our customer base saw that we were focused to get the lights back on. We brought in mutual aid to assist in getting the lights back on, and we worked long days, you know, in order to make that end, right? I think it would have sent a poor message if we sent them home on Sunday night and not kept them through Monday and Tuesday. I think it's the right call. Not always easy to make the right call, but I think it's the right call to keep them in, and it certainly helped out our processes.
I think you did a great job.
We still have
Yeah.
things we're addressing in the storm. I mean, again, we're a couple of weeks out, but we still have some topics that we've identified. We're just circling back. I got a switchgear that got flooded out in Britland Park up in off Miller. Took out the villages because it was the first switchgear out of it. And what happened was all the rain came in, not from the roadways, it came in from the pipes in the system and flooded the switchgear out, flashed over. Got to replace it. We'll replace it with a totally encapsulated switchgear, a little bit more money, but it's all under the FEMA reimbursement still now. So,
Do you happen to know off the top of your head what percentage of your service is above ground versus underground?
yeah, I think we're near 70% underground, right? Everything new is underground. New subdivisions are all underground. A lot of new homes, even their services in areas that we've spent. You know, a lot of our money to underground areas, we encourage our customers to go underground as well. Maybe a little bit more than encouraging. But we're at 70%. And again, when you took that big piece of Dixie and we used some of that fiber money to pay for all of that undergrounding, we did all across here at Carver Heights. Carver, across from our shop. I think it's Carver Heights. That's all underground area over there. So I think the city has spent a ton of money converting some stuff. And that's a difficult thing to do for any utility, right? To force that, or to have the ability to underground some of our facilities. You know, Winter Park is bragging left and right. The storm hit really hard, but you know, they went nearly unscathed with it.
Yeah.
All the money they've invested undergrounding their facilities. So I think we continue to push for the underground subdivisions. You know, we have opportunities to convert stuff. I think we could take advantage of that, but it's often cost prohibitive. It's 6-8 times more money to go underground than it is to just rebuild it overhead.
About a year ago, the poles that run down Lewis Road were all replaced. And I remember at that time thinking to myself, I wonder what the cost would be replacing all those poles. I think they went from wood to cement, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, I think
versus underground.
certain poles in our criteria that are switch poles or junction poles or have certain apparatus on it, we'll put concrete. The other ones are wood. But you see that feeder did not trip out, right? That feeder stayed up nice, but we just rebuilt it a few years ago. We trimmed out a lot of clearance stuff, so everything's brand new, and that held up really nicely. And again, you saw that one slide. There are a lot of pockets that remained unscathed. A couple were bragging lights didn't go out. We'll try to put you on a list for next year.
Yay!
But
As long as I have your telephone number.
Jesse, on the other hand, was one of the last. So.
Mine was out for 3.5 days, but I got to tell you, I couldn't be more pleased with the response, so I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I was, I think, as a residential customer in Leesburg, I was out longer than most of the people that I knew. But even then, given the extent of the storm and the damage, a common sense person can look around and say, this is gonna take a week or more. And that's what I had in my mind. So when I was back up in 3.5 days, I was thrilled.
Yeah.
I mean, I really was, and it helped too that the weather was nice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was nice.
Yep.
I remember saying, was it Wednesday night? Because I figured when I went home, you know, we weren't gonna do any restoration Thursday. We lost power around 11 o'clock, and I said, well, you know, I'm looking at my watch, and we're gonna be out for 2 days straight because, you know, we're not even gonna do anything on Thursday. But all that changed in the next day when, again, we started working 6 a.m. We started pulling everybody in. So,
Again, y'all did a great job.
I appreciate it. Again, if there's tweaks, when you have this slide, if you have things that you want to see added or modified, let me know. I haven't tried this out you're the first group that got to see it.
Good.
So I appreciate the feedback you got.
Thank you. All righty, roll call. Dan, anything? Yes, sir. Mark? Mr. Manager?
No, sir.
Jack? Nothing from me. All righty, we stand adjourned.